Hi guys, Richard from SharpshootingUK here. Right, this is the Lyman Gen5. This is the 2-minute basic super fast rundown that I'm doing at the beginning of these reviews. So I'm going to show you how this works. While it's throwing some charges, I will give you what I think is the bottom line on this thing. Don't worry about the screen, that's just the camera playing up. It's very clear, very tactile, very legible. So it saves you a lot of time in the setup of the scales and the thrower. That's where you really win when you're doing powder charges. Obviously throwing 50 grains of powder from a thrower is quicker than the dispenser can dispense it. It's just that the auto dispenser can dispense it. But it's just that all of the setup and all of the staring and fiddling and fine work that you have to do to set up beam scales and throwers, etc., is all completely cancelled by this. You just calibrate it at the beginning. It's never wandered off, it's dead stable, and I came at this, as you'll see in the rest of this review, from a very cynical standpoint, but I've been completely reassured. This thing just dead reliably weighs. The scale is very, 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 very reliable and solid and repeatable and trustworthy. All of my fears, which were quite significant, are completely put to bed. So that's fantastic. The throwing often throws a tenth under, so much so that you could actually aim a tenth above and get higher results. But it's dead easy to tune that. You can tap a few more kernels in with the trickle. You can tap a few more in by tapping the tube. You know, these charges that aren't exactly thrown, they don't have to go in your gun. You have the overall say as to whether they go in or not. So I found the machine to be absolutely priceless, much, much more reliable than I had hoped. It's super accurate. It's as accurate as I was before. I'm going to do a quick calibration just to show you how easy it is. Off with that. This check weight is exactly 50. I've actually got a very special one and compared it, and it's very, very good. Okay, this is how long the calibration takes. It never needs done. I just do it anyway, just to be thorough. $50 grams, lovely. That's the ticket. Back to grains. Okay, zero that. And you can tell that your scales are still in calibration primarily because the pan should always weigh the same, obviously. And this is 107.9 grains. Okay, I want 10 grains and I want it to repeat. Here's one, 9.9. Often goes minutely under. What you do is you do this. Okay, a couple of taps. Or there's another way. Okay, this is the trickle button. It's very sensitive, nice little touch. You can put the powder restrictor in if you need it. I haven't found that I need it really. 9.9. Tap tap, sorted. You see? So these latest technologies advertised on the box electronic interference shields, anti-static, anti-drift, seem to have indeed solved my great concerns about digital scales. I found them to be perfect. No movement or fussiness whatsoever. So that is pretty cool. Now, I haven't moved them from a cold garage to a warm office. I haven't messed with them. I've just set them up, as I'm sure most of you folks would, and plugged them into the mains and left them. They don't even need the 3-minute warm-up, which in itself is very rapid and very impressive, but it doesn't need it unless you have taken them off the mains. So I switch them on, check the calibration, and then rock and roll. And it saves a lot of time. Hi guys, Richard from SharpshootingUK here. I found a product that's really moved me forward and saved some time. This is a Lyman Gen5 powder dispenser. Essentially, I was always very cynical about digital scales. Yeah, particularly the digital scales. Not so much a powder dispenser, but the digital side of things, because of one simple thing. I met up with a friend of mine a few years ago, and we all had to do a bit of reloading before we went. So we all set our gear up, and he got these scales out, and they were really expensive. We couldn't breathe near them, talk near them, look at them, because they'd freak out and do something weird. And I just thought the things were bloody dangerous. And these were not cheap scales. And I just thought, why would you want that extra complication in your life at great expense? It then transpired that new technology came along, and things have improved. So what I wanted to know was, yes, it's going to save me time, but will it be accurate from the beginning of the session to the end of the session? Will it be temperature stable? Will it get fuzzy when my computer speakers start making noise, or if my phone rings? How fussy are these going to be? And my tolerance for that was basically zero. I need this product to be perfect and just work. I've got no patience for recalibrating every 10 rounds, or having to turn all the electronics off, or not being able to breathe near them. I had zero tolerance for it, so I came into this pretty negative. Then these new ones came along with new shielding, anti-static, anti-everything, basically anti-drift, anti-whatever you want to call it. They're promising that these things just work and stay working, so I was inclined to give them another try. So Optics Warehouse sent me this Lyman Gen5 out. Seems to me that the Gen5 and the Gen6 are the same gen, most annoyingly, most confusingly. And the Gen6 is the cheaper, very small footprint one, which I think is an excellent idea. This one, the Gen5 with the bigger footprint, has got memory and a trickler. So that seems to be the main difference there. But I believe the technology in the 5 and the 6 is the same. They certainly have the same screen and pan and such like. Essentially, we all feel that we have a good system, and it's constantly honed, and we're proud of it. The throwing, the weighing, trickling, getting everything just so. And I personally was a little defensive about there being huge room for improvement, to be honest. And when people said, well, these powder dispensers, they'll throw your charge in 10 seconds, I was thinking, well, I can throw a charge from the thrower real quick. I'll quickly trickle in a bit, weigh it. I've got a lovely little system. It takes me no time. But frankly, what I'd underestimated was the setup. When you're setting up your scales, you've got to pick at them. You pick them up. You've got to peer at them. You get them just right. You've then got to double check them, and same with your thrower. All of that setup is where you're losing the time, bending your back and staring. All of those things are tiring and time consuming. And this is particularly relevant when you're doing powder testing. powder charge testing, ladder testing, load development, call it what you will. If you've just got to throw 50 grains and whack it in the case, then so be it. But when you think about it, you're testing, you know, when you get a new rifle, new barrel, new bullet, new caliber, new powder, you have to test lots of different loads. And on your scales, each of them is fiddly. And you get a few wrong, have to throw them back. It takes time. If you want to throw 49.5 grains on one of these, you press 49.5 and you hit go. By the time you've picked up your bullet head and your case and got them ready to seat, the powder's ready. It's instant. And then you go, right, I now want 49.8, I want 50.2, 50.5. Boom, done, instant. And that's where it saves you, in my case, hours. Straightforward, but imagine how much setup this would be with a thrower and a scale. 55 please, go. There's no setup, no calibration apart from the quick calibration right at the beginning after you've taken the powder out. It doesn't seem to bother about temperature changes, and you're not supposed to have your phone right by it, you know, right on the desk, but I haven't found any problems. It is worth keeping vibration away from it. I've actually got my reloading dies on another bench, so this is just on its own on here with my powder and some bullet heads and such like. So I think that must help. But with regard to interference and temperature and general instability, it's rock solid. On the video, this screen appears to look blotchy. It's just the camera's metering. It's perfectly fine, nice and clear and legible and easy. $55, go. It's not the end of the world if you have to throw one back. I mean, I kind of had it in my head that that would be a bad charge in my gun, but you don't put it in your gun. It doesn't pass veto, you put it back. So you're still saving time, even if the occasional one has to go back. It's the same when you throw them yourself. You get the occasional one wrong, you have to chuck it back. But generally speaking, you're saving so much time in the process. There you go, 54.9. So if it were to keep doing this with this powder, I would simply set it to 55.1, and then it will throw 55 and you're cooking with gas. With the long stick powders I use, I often find it's better to aim a tenth higher. So if I want 27.5 for my 204, if I go 27.6, it tends to throw 27.5. It just tends to be cautious not to overthrow, you see. There we go. So it saves you a lot of time, dead stable, fast. The memory function I haven't used, but I imagine that might be quite handy. But it seems to me that if you're going to go recall, memory, number one, yeah, that's the one, go. Why don't you just go 55.7 and fire, you know? But the memory's there if you need it. The unit has a nice trickler on it. Change back to grains, sorry. Just kernel or two at a time. Very tactile. Then you've got fast, which really chucks it out. You can go straight from your memories. So from the beginning, you've got a little brush here in case you accidentally flick any powder onto the pan. Get rid of that. It's also used for the powder clean. Okay, this is my next fear, changing the powder. Takes a few minutes, but it's not rocket science. Leave it on. grab your container, turn this round, and there's a tiny trapdoor. Pull the trapdoors down. That powder gate. There's an overall flap, and then there's a on-off there, as it were, and that's what releases the powder. Open the inner trapdoor. Out comes all your powder. I put an awful amount in. It doesn't normally take this long. You don't normally put a whole kilo of powder in, or half a kilo, whatever I put in. You don't normally put that much in. It's quite a large dispenser. Out it comes. At this point, I take the outer glass off, which, by the way, you don't need to have on all the time. You can just run it like that with just an inch or so of powder in. It'll still do quite a lot of rounds. Grab your little brush that comes with and just rub the excess powder off the top of the spinning section. Okay. Close your trapdoor. Alright, that's the bulk of the powder out. I then turn it back round. Now you've got to empty the tube, which has still got powder in. I now hit fast trickle, and you get about 30 grains out of the dispenser tube. Obviously you can tell when it's empty because it stops coming out. Okay. Pop that back in our powder. Close it. Turn it round again. With a quick brush. I'll show you what the inside looks like. There's the inside, and you can see that that little trench there is normally full of powder, and that turns round like a trickler and trickles onto there. So all we've got to do is get the powder out off here, which is what I was doing earlier. Make sure it's none on here and on here. And then just a tiny little bit left in the bottom there, which we'll get out now when we're finished. You don't have to take the whole thing apart. Last little bit of powder. And that's us. You now can replace that with the powder of your choice. So I really like this. It solves a problem I didn't think I had, and has sped things up enormously, and I spend a lot less time staring at tiny little scales and fiddling with powder throwers, and it's cleared up quite a lot of space on my desk. I wouldn't be without it now. Don't be put off by this plus and minus a tenth thing. That, I imagine, that was the kind of accuracy of the scales, the complete output accuracy. What they're meaning is, at worst, it will throw plus and minus a tenth. And I suppose if you throw 100 grain charges, you might get one that's a couple of tenths, a tenth over, and you will certainly get ones that are a tenth under. There you go, that's plus and minus a tenth. But that doesn't mean that you have to then use them, and that's the most it can measure. I think the actual scales, the actual weighing part of it, not the dispensing, is, well, it's accurate to a tenth. But you can actually then make that slightly more accurate by feeding it in gently. So I think half a tenth of ultimate output accuracy using the scale. And the thrower, yes, occasionally it will make a small mistake, hence the plus minus a tenth, that's guaranteed. But of course you don't use them, do you? You tweak them till they're right and then you use them. So all of my fears were completely put to bed, and I find this absolutely invaluable now. Optics Warehouse carry them in the UK. They'll look after you if you were to have any problems. Lyman are a major company, and Optics Warehouse are a major company. So, you know, have no fear about warranty or whatever. But no, I think it's great. Touchscreen is very, very accurate and unfussy. Sometimes touchscreens can be awful. You practically have to hit them with a hammer. But when you're coming to the trickling on this, you know, the slightest tap, tap, and in it trickles. So all of that's fine. It's easy to clean. You can get spare parts. You know, fantastic product.